This video is on factoring polynomials using the greatest common factor. There are a lot more lengthy videos out there on how to do this, that their examples show a lot of things and takes a lot of time to get the examples. I kind of simplify the way I teach it, but because of that, it may take several examples before you get the hang of it. The greatest common factor with numbers is the biggest number that'll go into both. So for instance, what's the biggest number that'll go into both 3 and 15 is how we're thinking about the greatest common factor. And the greatest common factor that will go into both 3 and 15 is 3. 3 will go into 3 one time, 3 will go into 15 5 times. Now we also have to factor our variables. So I could factor a w out of this first term, but there's not one in the second. I could factor a v out of the second term, but there's not one in the first. So I don't have any variables that are common factors. So my greatest common factor is 3. I'm done. Now I have to write what's left. After I factor 3 out of this 15w term, I am left with 5w. The w I didn't factor out is still there. And for the number, you think, what can I multiply by this 3 to get 15? 3 times 5 is 15. 3 times 5w is 15w. Now I factored a 3 out of this one. I left the v. It's still negative, so I'm left with negative v. And that is the answer. We have factored this binomial by factoring out the greatest common factor, which was 3. We can always take our answer, use the distributive property, and it should give us the question. 3 times 5w is 15w. 3 times negative v is negative 3v. On 1b. So when I'm factoring out the greatest common factor, I need to think about my 3 coefficients, my u's, and my t's. Let's start with the coefficients. 7, 21, and 1 or negative 1. Doesn't really matter how you look at it. Since my coefficient here is 1, I can't factor out any numbers bigger than 1, so none of that's going to help me. If I only had 2 terms, I could factor out a 7. But since I have this 1, my greatest common factor is 1, and that doesn't help me. So let's look at the u's. I have 2 u's here, 1 u in this term, and 1 u in this term. So I can factor 1 of those u's out. I have 2 t's in this term, 2 t's in this term, but only 1 t in that term. So I can factor 1 t out. So let's see what's left. My greatest common factor is ut. That's going to leave me with this 7. I factored 1 of those 2 u's out. 1 is still there. I factored 1 of those 2 t's out. 1 is still there. And now we can go backwards. ut times 7ut would be 7u squared t squared. Now let's look at the second term. I didn't factor coefficient out, but I did take this u out. Since I took this u out, there's no u's left in this term. There were 2 t's. I took 1 out, so there's only 1 t left. So the 21 is left, and 1 of those t's is left. Here, when I take ut out, I'm going to be left with an understood negative 1 coefficient here. And that is factored form for that trinomial. And again, you could take this u2, distribute it 3 times, and you would end up back at the question there. Okay, here's another example. This is a binomial, 2 terms. My greatest common factor amongst my coefficients is 5. 5 will go into 15 3 times, 5 will go into 25 5 times, and 5 is the biggest number that will go into both 15 and 25. So I factor out a 5. I've got 1x in the first term, 2x's in the second term, so I can factor 1x out of both of those terms, and my greatest common factor is 5x. I took the x out of this term, and 5 times 3 is 15. 5x times 3 is 15x. All right, I factored a 5 out of this 25, so that's going to leave me with 5 because 5 times 5 is 25. I had 2 x's. I factored 1 out. That leaves me with 1. And again, you can check your work. 5x times 3 is 15x. 5x times 5x is 25x squared. On the next one, I have 4 terms. I have 3 terms. 1, 2, 3. So my coefficients are 12, 24, and 30. So I know 2 will go into them. I know 3 will go into them. I know 6 will go into them. 12 will not. So 6 is my greatest common factor. 6 will go into here twice, here 4 times, and here 5 times. So let's factor the 6 out. Now let's look at our x's. I have 1 here, 2 here. So I can factor 1x out. And on the y's, I have 1, 2, and 4. Because this one only has 1, the most y's I can factor out is 1. My greatest common factor is 6xy. Now let's look at what's left. 6 times 2 is 12. I took this x and this y out, so that's all that's left in my first term is a 2. On the second term, 6 times 4 is 24. I took the x out, it's gone. I took one of those y's out, so I have 1 y left. 4 y's left in the second term. Okay, we're going to leave this minus sign. 6 times 5 is 30. I took one of the x's out, I have 1 left. I took one of the y's out, I have 3 left. I had 4, took 1 out, have 3 left. So this is fully factored, and if you distributed this 6xy to these 3 terms, you would end up with the question. I'm going to zip through 4 more examples pretty fast. So I have 2 terms here, binomial. The greatest common factor between 4 and 6 is 2. I have 1x in both terms, so I can take that 1x out of both of them. I have 2 y's in the first term, 3 in the second, so I can take 2 y's out of both of them, both of those and 2 of those 3. My greatest common factor is 2xy squared. What's left? 2 times 2 is 4. I took the x out in both the y's, so that's all that's left in the first term. In the second term, I took the x out in 2 of the 3 y's, so I'm left with 1 of the y's, and 2 times 3 is 6. If you distribute, you'll get the question. On the next example, my greatest common factor between 2 and 8 is 2. I have 2 d's here, 1 d here, so I can take 1 out. 2d is my greatest common factor. 2 times 4 is 8. I took one of the 2 d's out, so that leaves me with 1. I took this whole 2d out, so I'm going to be left with an understood 1 in this second term. 2d times 4d is 8d squared. 2d times 1 is 2d. On the next example, greatest common factor between 27 and 18 is 9. I have 2 y's here, 1 y here, so the most I can take out is 1 y. 9 times 3 is 27. I took one of the 2 y's out, got 1 left. 9 times 2 is 18. I took the y out, don't have any left. 9y times 3y is 27y squared. 9y times 2 is 18y. One more example. Greatest common factor between 4, 8, and 2 is 2. Now, I could factor out positive 2 or negative 2. Once you get more experience, you'll kind of learn which one you want to do. We'll just factor a positive 2 out of this one. On my A's, I got 2, 1, 1, so I can factor an A out. On my B's, I got 1, 2, 1, so I can factor a B out. My greatest common factor is 2AB. That leaves me with negative 2A on the first term. 2 times negative 2 is negative 4. Took one of the 2 A's out, 1 left. Took the B out, none left. 2 times negative 4 is 8. I took the A out and one of the B's, so I'm left with 1 B. And I took the 2, the A, and the B out, so I'm left with an understood 1 in that third term. And again, you could distribute and end up with the question. Now let's let you try some. Okay, you try 1A. For 1A, your greatest common factor is 3, and you're left with 5W minus V. Try 1B. For 1B, your greatest common factor is UT, and you are left with 7UT, positive 21T, negative 1. And I just realized those are my first 2 examples, so you've seen those before. Here are you a couple of fresh ones. Try number 15. On 15, your greatest common factor is 8. Can't take a t out because the second term don't have 1. Can't take a y out because the first term don't have 1. And that leaves you with 2t and negative 5y. 8 times 2t is 16t. 8 times negative 5y is negative 40y. Try number 16. On number 16, my greatest common factor is 10, and that leaves me with 3v and 5x. 10 times 3v is 30v, 10 times 5x is 50x. Try number 17. On number 17, your greatest common factor is 2k. That leaves you with k plus 2. Number 18 says 5z squared plus 10z. Try number 18. Your greatest common factor is 5z. You're left with z and 2. 5z times z is 5z squared. 5z times 2 is 10z. Try number 19. Number 19, your greatest common factor is 2ab. That's going to leave you with 2ab on the first term, a on the second term. You took the 2 out, the b out, and one of the two a's left with 1a, and negative 5b on the third term. Try number 20. Number 20, your greatest common factor is 5c squared v. You had two c's in every single term that could come out, but you only had one v in this first term, so you could only take one of them out. That leaves you with 1 in the first term because you took everything out, so you have to leave your understood 1. It leaves you with negative 3v in the second term and positive v squared in the third term. All right, try this next one that's labeled example. My greatest common factor is 2y squared, and that leaves me with the x in the first term and 2 in the second term. Looks like we're starting over at number 1 here. Try number 1. Your greatest common factor on number 1 is 3. That leaves you with 7b in the first term, negative 5a in the second. Try number 2. Your greatest common factor on number 2 is 2c. You're left with 7c plus 1. So I hope after we've done this many, these are starting to get easier for you. And by the way, this is the easiest way to factor is using a greatest common factor. The other ways are not nearly as fun and not nearly as easy. But those will be different lessons. Try number 3. Greatest common factor on number 3 is GH. Because you have a coefficient here of 1 or negative 1, can't really factor any coefficients out. And that's going to leave your 3 terms in parentheses as 10GH, 9H, and negative G. Try number 4. Your greatest common factor is 2, JK. That leaves you with 6K, 3J, and JK. Try number 5. Your greatest common factor on number 5 is 5x. That leaves you with 3 plus 5x. Try number 6. Your greatest common factor on number 6 is 6xy. I feel like we've done this one before. And in parentheses, you're left with 2, positive 4y, and negative 5xy cubed. Number 7, time to challenge ourselves a little bit. Let me read it to you, make sure you can read my writing. Actually, let me see if I can blow it up for you. Hold on. Okay, number 7 reads 2x squared y cubed z to the 5th minus 6x squared y cubed z to the 5th plus 4z to the 5th plus 2y squared z to the 5th. 1, 2, 3, 4 terms. Factor it. Okay, your greatest common factor of your 4 coefficients is 2. For the x's, you can't factor them out. You have 2 in the first term, 2 in the second, but you don't have any in the third or the fourth term, so you cannot factor out an x. Let's look at the y's. 3, 3, don't have any here, so I can't factor a y out. On the z's, 5, 5, 5, and 5. I can factor all 5 of those z's out. So my greatest common factor is 2z to the 5th. Now what's left? In the first term, I took the 2 out, the z to the 5th, so I'm left with this x squared y cubed. In the second term, 2 times -3 is -6. I took both the x's out. I'm sorry, I didn't do that. I took all 5 of the z's out. I'm left with both the x's and all 3 of the y's. Here, 2 times 2 is 4. I took all 5 z's out. And on the fourth term, the 2 came out, the 5 z's come out. I'm just left with the y squared. And there's your answer. Once you get the hang of these, they're really easy and fast. Let's do a couple more. Let's try number 8. Your greatest common factor on number 8 is p. That leaves you with 3pr squared, 6r, and positive 1. All right, last one, number 9. On number 9, your greatest common factor is 10x to the 5th. That leaves you with y plus 2x squared. So I hope you agree with me that these are kind of quick and easy once you get the hang of them. And once you see all the other ways to factor, you'll appreciate how great factoring using the greatest common factor is. Thank you.